Hi there, I'm Matt, and I'm one of the pastors of a church in Wigston, Leicester, called Hope Community Church, and this is the Hope Community Church vlog. And on today's episode, I'm joined by a friend of mine, Debbie. So, Debbie, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, my name's Debbie. I'm married to Jason. We live locally in Wigston, and we are a fostering family at the moment. We've been fostering for a while, for about 7 years. And we're also involved in a charity called Home for Good.
Amazing. And it's Home for Good, really, that we want to talk about today. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about what Home for Good is, why it exists?
Okay. So Home for Good is a national Christian charity that was established about 5 years ago as a response to the growing number of children in the UK who are coming into the care system. It recognised that as a church community, we should take seriously our call to care for the most vulnerable people in our society, of which children coming into care are the most vulnerable. And so it was posed this kind of challenge, I guess, to churches across the UK. What can we do in response to that? Could we become foster carers and adopters ourselves and offer up our homes to those children? Or are there other ways that we can get involved? And so Home for Good exists to raise awareness of the needs of these children, to encourage people to provide families and homes for them, and to wrap around those families that are caring for vulnerable children, whether that's in a church setting or a school or a community setting. Wherever you come in touch with these children and these families, what is it that you can do to help and support them?
Brilliant. But why should Christians specifically care? Like, why should the church particularly care about those in the care system?
It's clear in the Bible that the greatest commandments are to love God and to love each other. And so we love each other by opening ourselves up to knowing who they are, who these children are, and by showing that we love them, we care for them, we're concerned about them, we want to help them practically and emotionally and in any way that we can think of. And I feel that fostering and adoption is a mission opportunity and a ministry opportunity, that we are ministering to these families, but also by welcoming them into our home, we are opening them up to hearing the gospel, that we can share what it is for ourselves to be Christians and to live a faith life. And also, there is a clear biblical mandate in the Bible to care for the vulnerable. So James says about caring for orphans and widows in their distress. Well, we don't often use the phrase orphans any longer, but these are children who need a family. And so we are called in the Bible to care for those children. And there are lots of creative ways that we can do that. You know, it's not always about the big things, it's often about the little things too, about, you know, welcoming that child and understanding what experience they may have had and how that's impacted upon them, how to really include them in a way that is mindful of that trauma that they've experienced, but offer them opportunities to heal from that trauma. And that's just by being friendly and by being, you know, open to listening and to be getting involved in activities that they might not have done before. There's lots of different ways that we can support those children, as well as obviously becoming foster carers and adopters ourselves.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. And of course, I'd want to encourage anyone out there who maybe is feeling that tug towards fostering and adoption to get in touch with Home for Good. And we could talk a bit about how to do that later on, perhaps. That's how Lou and I started our journey into adoption, as we got in touch with Home for Good. But what I'm hearing is that you think this is a wider thing than just people who want to adopt and foster themselves. How can this be a whole church thing?
I think first of all, it's about looking at the church and going, do we have the kind of process in place? It sounds a bit boring, but actually safeguarding, for example, and kind of good children's ministry and additional needs ministry really help a family feel protected and safe within your building. A lot of these children, they've experienced trauma. They don't trust adults. They will struggle with relationships and might have behavioural challenges. How could you as a church ensure that these kids feel that they can be themselves in that environment, but also be with adults that get them and not going to label them as problem children or children with issues? So these are kids that need love and security. So thinking about the processes and the way that we run services and children's work and family support, all that kind of aspect of getting alongside people is really important. The other things that you can do is, if you know there's a foster family or adoptive family within your church, is to ask them how they are, and to be prepared for the answer, because people want to feel listened to. And I know from personal experience that fostering is a joy and a challenge at the same time. So many highs and so many lows, and you really want people to get a sense of that and to know what it's like. So just be prepared to listen to the families, work out what's going on for them, and ask them, how can we support you? Because generally these families have an idea of what is going to be helpful and not helpful. So prayer is the obvious one, and practical support around meals and things, particularly when you've got children coming and going, and things are busy. Meals are really, really valued. And just also be aware of the things that you can't ask, because foster carers and adopters want to protect their children, and they're protecting a child's history. They know stuff about that child, and they are entrusted with that information. And so they can't share that beyond the people who need to know. So don't ask questions that are really personal about why a child's in care or what's happened to them or anything like that. To be really mindful of the fact that confidentiality is important. And there are some language issues around fostering and adoption. So fostering is different to adoption, it's a different legal status. In fostering, you're going to see children come and go more. In adoption, it's more permanent. So just be aware of the fact that there are differences in those. So yeah, just kind of be aware of those, and chat with kind of the foster families and adoptive families in your church, in your community, and find out what works for them.
Amazing. And Home for Good are doing amazing work in raising awareness and supporting those who are in fostering and adoption. You're involved with Home for Good Leicester. We'd love to be praying for, well, you personally, you and Jason personally, but also Home for Good. So how can we be praying for you well, particularly in this season?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously in this current season, things are very different, aren't they, for all of us, and particularly for foster and adoptive families, because we're doing the things that a lot of parents are doing. We're kind of caring for our children at home, trying to balance the demands of homeschooling with work and family life. So we're doing that anyway, but we've got extra challenges because we have to also manage contact with birth family, and we're trying to do that in different ways. So trying to use technology around to do contact with birth family. We have a lot of supervision and visits from social workers, and again that has to continue, but it's in a different way. So it's managing all this extra demands on our time. For us, we have 2 boys that are living with us permanently, and they have additional needs. Our eldest has ADHD and our youngest is autistic. And I mean, a lot of parents will understand with additional needs, it adds an extra complexity onto parenting, but especially when you've got a trauma history and additional needs and dealing with social workers and dealing with birth family. It's a lot of layers. So it can be quite tiring, and it's just about, I think for us, having wisdom to know how to meet our children's needs well. We don't always have wisdom. We're trying our best, and we're kind of fumbling in the dark a little bit sometimes, but we want to look after our kids well, and we want to be able to meet their needs. And we sometimes find it hard when obviously things are so different at the moment, all the changes that are going on, trying to help our children still feel secure and safe, even if we don't have answers for them in terms of what's going to happen next around the coronavirus outbreak or schooling or whatever. Just got to reassure and help them in that. So I think all foster families and adoptive families would appreciate support around helping their children with the kind of the security and safety aspect of being in this current crisis and additional needs there. And then I guess for Home for Good more generally, as a trend, what we are seeing across the country is an increase in children coming into care. That's because there are more families under pressure now because of the lockdown. And obviously, if there's more children coming into care across the country, we need more foster carers and adopters to step forward to provide homes for them. So a general prayer for Home for Good across the country is, more people stepping forward to become foster carers and adopters. And then we've got a few little campaign things coming up. So we've got Father's Day coming up in a few weeks' time, and that's a lovely opportunity to talk about the roles of fathers and to really be kind of celebrating that, in all different ways, and to help children who they've probably had some difficult experiences with being fathers in the past, help them to understand that it's always a bit of a kind of tightrope, isn't it? We're trying to manage the different feelings that these kids have around being parented. So, to be sensitive in how we celebrate Father's Day. The churches do that well, for us to do that well in our family as well. And lots of foster adopted families will deal with questions about identity, about where the children have come from, what their families are like. You need a lot of wisdom to deal with that. So we can pray for that too.
Thank you so much. And we will be praying. It's really striking that there's an uptick in the number of families in care, or number of children going into care. And, I just think it's really challenging as well that adoption and welcoming the stranger is right at the heart of the gospel. And there are so many churches out there. And I can't help but think if, one person from every church decided to be involved in fostering an adoption, and then they had a group of people around them to support them, you got to think that would almost solve the social care crisis in our country in terms of children going into care.
Yeah, I mean, that was the vision when Home for Good was set up 5 years ago. Was at the time the statistics said there was 15,000 more adopted and foster families needed, and around 15,000 churches across the UK. So that's the vision: one family per child, and the whole of the church wrapping around them. So in a way, it seems quite easy, but it's a big thing to become an adopter or a foster carer. We have to be honest about the reality of the system and the process that you go through to become a foster carer or adopter. And we are always kind of realistic about that. And what we say as a charity is that we are happy to have conversations with anybody interested in fostering adoption and talk them through the process about the kind of application and assessment, and then kind of approval and matching going forward, and to journey with them in that, because we've been through as a foster family 2 separate fostering assessments, one a long time ago when we started fostering, and had a break, and then we did another one. And so we know what it's like to go through the assessment process. It's long and exhausting sometimes, and we've got to keep going at it. And we can say, look, we know what that feels like. There are people that we can put in touch with you who will help you with the ups and downs of the assessment, because we would long for more people to come forward. That's our heart. As a charity, that's our heart, is to find more homes for these children. But we recognise it's a big ask in a way, but it's so worth it, because these kids, when they come into your family, they bring you so much joy, and you can see the transformation that is possible in a child's life. You're making a difference to a child, and that's worth all the hassle and the assessments and the prophecy that you're going to go through to get there.
That's amazing. And I remember Krish Kandiah saying that churches run ministry for the homeless and ministry for those in the sex industry and ministry for addicts and all that kind of stuff. And he says, but when you do a ministry with children in the care system, you're accessing those children who maybe are heading towards that life so much earlier before they head down that path. And so it's so vital. So I just want to encourage folk who are watching this, if you feel like the Lord is just impressing this on your heart, whether that's to be involved personally yourself or to support those who are, I want to encourage you to get in touch with Home for Good. How do people do that, Debbie?
You can get in touch really easily. They can email us leicester@homeforgood.org.uk, or they can go onto the website, which is www.homeforgood.org.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Debbie. I'm sure folk will be getting in touch to ask loads of questions. But that's all we've got time for today. And so do check out our other vlogs on our YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook as well. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.